Hello, hello. Welcome back to What Problem Are You Solving? The most amazing innovation podcast you've seen all week. John Ruark. Uh, we got Ty, Adam. We got the whole crew here tonight, ready to talk about lots of fun things. But first, Ty, what problem are you solving this week?
Well, good afternoon, gentlemen. Good evening. Good morning, America. What problem am I solving? So this is week number 2 of my new gig. I'm still trying to figure out what I'm supposed to be doing. It is interesting because the job is to help pull together an ecosystem of of capital, of support for, if you put the put the startup in the middle, how do we find the capital, how do we find the support, how do we find the back end, trying to figure it all out. It's a brand new program, it's recently funded. It's interesting because I'm asking questions that, I don't know, sometimes it feels like, yeah, I mean, we're on point, and other times I'm like, I'm not exactly sure what we're doing. One thing I am clear about is that it is vitally important that your innovation strategy, your business strategy, and your data strategy all cohere into a similar direction, because you could be doing all the right things. I mean, we know what strategy is. You could be doing all the right things and end up with all the wrong outcomes. And so I've been struggling with that, but it's only like literally day 6.
So you're an expert.
So
Got it.
yeah, I'm an expert in all things of my new job. But on the good side is I have a problem that I want to discuss with you all. It's about AI and the ethics of AI, and how do you do things ethically. But we can talk about that. But on a good problem to be solved is my youngest son just started his internship as an AI tools developer. So he's going to be
Love
developing
it.
AI tools. Absolutely. And it's anything from completely adjacent to a nonprofit kind of stuff.
Mhm.
I got pulled into the meeting and he's under an NDA, obviously, because it's a high tech company, all the way through technology companies, all the way to work supporting the government. So he could end up with a clearance at
Yeah, that's
20 years
awesome.
old, which is
That's
pretty
amazing.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Well, good
pretty
luck.
cool. Offline, I'll tell you who he's working with. It's somebody you and I know.
Nice.
Yeah. So that's cool. And the oldest one is doing his thing, and I get to. One more thing, and I'll shut up after this. So I think I've told you all that I am. It's an interesting problem. I'm not a I don't know. I'm not a technologist in the hardware software. Um, in the hardware software, by definition, in hardware software. But I think I'm a technologist when it comes to understanding the power of technology and how it creates value.
Yeah.
Right? Where are the integration points?
Mm-hmm.
And so I have a opportunity here in DC to be the keynote for a brand new program called DC Startup and Tech Week, and they're doing some stuff on autonomy. And so I get to talk about autonomy and the power of autonomy in terms of value creation. It's like 5 or 10 minutes, nothing big, but it's kind of cool that somebody
Yeah.
said, "Hey, you have something to say about autonomy, about technology, without being a hardcore technologist."
Yeah.
So
You're like you're a
that's
techno opportunist.
I like that. I was playing with ChatGPT today, and I said, "How would you describe me doing all the stuff?" And not interestingly enough, the very first thing that came out is called a catalyst. They use the word catalyst.
Which
And
I
I
know
actually
you
belong
enjoy.
to,
Yeah.
yeah, that's right. I belong to an organization called Catalyst Constellations, where they bring along catalytic leaders. And what do we know about catalysts? They engage the process, but they don't necessarily involve themselves in the process. They
And they
don't
go
stay engaged.
moo. Oh, that's
Yep.
cattle. That's cattle.
Stop it. I'm done. Over to you.
Adam, what problem are you solving this week?
I will segue into, I will take us from our conversation with David Bland, who will be joining us next week. Where's it? Like sometimes you need a vacation from a vacation. I think we need an episode just to go back to recapping last week. But there was a point where we talked about investing in testing the risky assumption, not necessarily investing in a startup or a founder or a team, and so I'm excited to see what you have in store tonight because I do think whether it's a studio model or an agency, agencies sort of invest in a prolonged design sprint. I want to see if you can get even more tactical, like
Ooh, interesting.
literally create a marketplace.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to call David this week. Yeah, I think you can create a marketplace like Fiverr, but in that old fantasy football startup idea I had. This one, I think we're going to try to launch at least and fund a couple. I want to fund. It's not VC. It's not angel. It's like angel investing for specific experiments with an incentive to report, not just to win or to become a unicorn, but to actually share what you learned.
Right.
And
Right.
then you're investing in the founder because the founder, you're not necessarily investing in that idea.
Right.
You're getting equity or debt attached to that founder because they're getting smarter and if they're doing it the right way. Okay. That's what problem I would like to solve that is both topical to last week.
Timely.
All right. And I'm trying to solve the Mother's Day, all the sports, all the fun, and grateful to my mother and wife, and so exhausted. But this, yeah, all the mothers out there.
Well, you were just preparing for Father's Day month, so.
Right.
So.
Well, one of us really has to celebrate Father's Day month because you got 5 times.
Need to run a Father's Day sprint. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Let's see. Problem I'm solving this week. It's strategy season. Holy smokes! We're more than halfway through the fiscal year, so everyone's got extra money lying around, and I've got three separate strategy workshops lined up. And so I'm really excited about dusting off the old play to win strategy and helping teams unpack, what their assumptions are and where they're headed. I was doing some preliminary work with a client just today who's just trying to say, well, what are you trying to get out of this workshop and everything? And we're trying to figure out, what value we're giving to our customers. So I was like, okay, like, can you name your customers? Well, see, that's the problem. Oh, okay. We're starting there. Okay, so what value do you create? Well, you see,
Stuck on question number 1, huh?
Some of the early questions were the hardest. So hopefully, if that engagement goes well, I'll crack some skulls open and hopefully get them somewhere much further along than they are today. So I'm looking forward to that.
Is this internal?
This is internal, right? Some internal customers. But
and so are they
really need it?
Are they is it literally as straightforward as that, where they acknowledge it's budget related and they have X amount of money where they're deciding with your help, like by the end of the week, are they gonna attach it to an OKR or put it in an actual roadmap bucket?
That's the goal, and that's that's the way I do my workshops too. Is I want it to actually turn into clear objectives, whether they're OKRs or epics in your Jira tool. Like, I want it to actually turn into something that you are going to do about it. You're going to build, not just we're going to do gooder and be great at things and stuff, right? I want it to turn into an actual, this, I'm going to do this first and then do this next. And my goal is to get here by 8 months to a year from now.
Have you done retros on those workshops? Because this is where we were talking about minimum viable strategy. And so it's hard enough for people to look backwards even after a 3-week sprint.
Right.
I would love for us, or for some of us, or we keep talking about the bigger group, getting everyone together. I would love to see someone study if we really do go down that minimum viable strategy and studying that, like putting some science or data behind the decisions of where you were allocating epics or dollars, and then did we make the right decision? Why? Yeah,
exactly.
I think that'd be fascinating. All right.
So John, this past week, was it Thursday? I joined in a 4-hour session, really, really powerful session with some very interesting people doing some very interesting things. And they had a design. It was called a design lab. And at one point, they wanted to talk about strategy, and they started doing backcasting. And I was like, I know backcasting. And so it was fascinating for them to say, 50 years from now, we wanted to be in this, or 30 years, whatever the time horizon was. Our goal is to be this thing and articulate it. And we did the Roger Martin. If the opposite sounds stupid, it probably is not a strategy. You haven't made a real choice.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
And we did the backcasting, and I think it would be fascinating to watch both play to win. All right, what's our winning aspiration? Where do we want to play, and how do we intend to win, and get rid of the rest of the other three, four and five, and
Mm-hmm.
backcast it, and just say, are you familiar with backcasting, Adam? You know that process? So, a colleague of mine out of the Center for Applied Research, University of Penn, wrote a really interesting article, um, and we can reference it. Maybe I'll find it and send it over, John, and then you can post it because I have problems getting posting stuff. But anyway, I'll forward it once we're looking. But Hirschhorn said that what's effective about backcasting is that if you identify the goal, you identify what gets in the way of that, right? So
Mm-hmm.
here's the intermediate layer. We didn't do this, we didn't do that. Well, what are the things that had to be overcome to get through that
Right.
next level? And so it's like 1.1. Well, what got in the way? The obstacles versus the accomplishment, right? What happens if
Mm-hmm.
you take away, if you list that out all the way out till, like, what are we going to do tomorrow, right? To its logical conclusion, what happens if you take away the obstacles?
Just you got your happy path. Boop, 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 boop. That's what I need to
Yep,
do in that order.
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. I know exactly what I need to do tomorrow to
Mm-hmm.
get me to 5 years. And the way I talked about it is in track and field, the Russians, and I will say the Russians because that's how it was during that Russian era. They did periodization, and periodization was they had a 4 year period. And that 4 year period was as soon as the closing ceremonies in the Olympics, they started planning for the next Olympics.
Mm-hmm.
They could backcast it all the way to a training session of 90 minutes a day. Like we had 90
Nice.
minutes to do whatever we were going to
Right.
do. And we would do these cycles.
Yep.
Sound familiar? We do these cycles of support to get to a 4 year goal of I'm going to stand on the podium, right? I'm going to be ready to get the Olympic medal. But if I don't plan it backcast it to the day after the closing ceremonies, I haven't thought about it. And it's a
Right.
powerful analogy. It's a powerful way to build it. And I actually did it with one of the organizations that we used to work with, and it was amazing to see them go, "Oh, I never thought about that." Oh, you mean I got to do? Yeah, you got to do that. And so you end up with these really, really, really rich trails of behaviors and accomplishments and focus and all the rest of that stuff.
That's
I mean,
cool.
even
That's
down
super
to like
cool.
widget, like really, really thin stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
just as you said, strategy, bling, 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 my
Love it.
antennae go up.
Very cool.
Thank
Very,
you.
very, very cool. So tonight's topic is one that been kicking around as a good idea. With all these iterations, and we're big fans of experiments and running very short and quick experiments. Google has come up with a methodology, pretty rigid methodology actually, like break it down by the hour what you're supposed to do, called the Google Design Sprint. This came out of their Google Ventures organization, where they would fund both internal and external little startups and entrepreneurial type activities. But they said, hey, if you're going to do this, these are the combination of lessons learned and in the order in which we could get some sort of value delivered very quickly. And so they've run this hundreds of times internally, and then they actually started documenting it and kind of open sourcing it for everyone to ingest. So over time, they actually did turn into a book called The Sprint. And you can go to thesprintbook.com. I'm actually going to share my screen here and show you a little bit of it. And you could actually just go right on thesprintbook.com and just follow the steps there. They give it all away for free. There's more detail and nuance and other little checklists and everything that you could use in the book. So it's definitely worth the upsell, but nothing says you couldn't just take the material here and start running with it. In fact, they made it so simple that you could go from a challenge to actual learning with data in 5 days, one business week from Monday through Friday. And so at the macro level, it's just as simple as on Monday do this, on Tuesday do this, on Wednesday do this, etc., etc. Now, is it perfect? No. Is it very fast? Yes. Is it high paced? Yes. Is it going to answer all your problems? No. And so the wisdom in this is actually knowing when and when not to do a design sprint, because it does require a team to be dedicated full time for 5 full days in order to produce some new prototype that's never been created before and actually show it in front of a customer. So any questions so far?
Yeah. So how much are they solving for? Because I'm looking at this. I'm like, challenge and learn. And you make a chart and you choose a target, and it says a target. Doesn't say target.
A target. Absolutely. You can't boil the ocean with the Google Design Sprint. You got to pick one problem to solve and crush it in 4 days after that. Yeah. So we'll drill down a little bit deeper into kind of what the methodology is. But yeah, Adam.
I love the design sprint. I love the pieces of the design sprint. I feel like the riskiest assumptions are that target, so we can start building our guests into. So, okay, apology over. Google for startups. I can go upstairs and get my sweatshirt. Love all this. Yeah. I'm excited to break down each piece. I want to talk about when. I want to talk about what that target is and how do you carve out time. Because I think I can say this out loud. Like the myth of 20% time is that it's 120% time.
Yeah.
But just even refreshing as I'm looking at this chart, we all even the lean build, measure, learn curve is a circle. You don't want to go in circle. I don't think any sprint is valuable until it's what happens from learning. It's the decision and sprint 2, and I know that's kind of implicit here.
What do you do with it?
But I really I used to use like roller coasters as a metaphor, and when I was still it's fun to do slides. It's like it's that first hill is all the work, but then the loops should feed into each other, and it's not just like I obviously
that's a good metaphor. I like that.
Thank you. I always liked I like the I think therefore I am testing my assumptions. I love that one. And Bertfield, and I'll give Bertfield a shout out. That was in the front of some of my slides, because yes, it was all of that. You need that initial try not to oversell it here, but yes, you need external forces, what are the energy, that potential energy. You got potential energy, and convert. But yes, after, I also say it's Frankenstein at the moment. It's only alive after you use the learnings from the first, and so it's got to perpetuate forward. And so I think that this is fair. It's the minimum, but that's why I still like Tristan's stuff and building.
It's another tool in the toolbox, right? Knowing when to use it and when not to use it.
Let's go.
What's interesting about this is, I think, because I deal with a lot of students. I've done a couple design for good sessions, with some college students around the country. One of which got into a pitch competition. His pitch deck is janky, but his idea art is crazy, and it's literally they built this thing in 8 hours, which was teach them feasible, viable, desirable, don't get caught in your first assumption, blah, blah, blah. Get out and talk to people, come in, iterate, test, all in 8 hours, in less than 8 hours, right? He built something that was pretty funky. I thought he did a good job. But what I like about this idea is that you could teach this to kids.
Yes, right? Absolutely.
You could teach this to literally 8th and 9th graders to get them to start building something. like junior achievement, right? You could teach. I wish I had this. I was working with a junior achievement team. Ooh, so Jay is now going into his 5th year, and he was a junior. So 7 years ago, this is way pre-COVID.
Mm-hmm.
If I'd have really thought about it, we could have had helped these kids really test not just a product, but a business idea by doing this, by using this.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So that's the first observation. The second observation is, and I don't know, Adam, you've actually played with it. John, you play with it. I've kind of sat and looked at it on the periphery. Can you run these multiple again? Right,
Oh,
test
sure.
one thing at a time, but you can
Right.
run these in serial
Yeah.
as you're running it. So you get teams
Absolutely.
exploring one. Hey, you take this one, you take this one, you take this one, you take this one, and we're going to run them in consecutively in 5 days. And the thing that pops out on top now, because now we have data to prove out that we've
Yeah.
actually
That's
done the
interesting.
work. That's if you can
It's
get enough
possible.
time.
Yeah.
Time and money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's what I think is valuable about this. The other thing that, because you kind of alluded to the build, measure, learn kind of loop, also is on gv.com/sprint, Google Ventures. I like how they even have the build, launch, learn, idea loop here. It's very similar to design, build, test, etc. Right? But they say the Google design sprint really focuses on idea and learn, and it's really not it's much more of a brainstorming prototype activity that you do validate in front of a customer. So you're building, but you're really building the interface to something, right? Because you don't have time to build the back end, right? You're really just going to prototype something very, very quickly, get it out the door, and we'll talk about what that's best for and all that. But to start, let's dive into it. Because it's 5 days, the high level concept is on Monday, figure out what the problem is. What problem are you solving? And that could be like, think about the customer journey, some steps in a process, and figure out which piece of this process you're going to focus on. You're not solving the whole thing, but what am I going to improve? And so that's where it says make a map and choose a target. That target is the one problem, a target that you're going to improve on just for this design sprint. On Tuesday, get your pencils out, get your inner artist out, and start coloring, start drawing, start sketching. It doesn't have to be perfect, and so they really focus on, very much like the IDEO design diamonds, get lots of ugly ideas out, right? Quantity over quality, and then you start to narrow down, which leads into Wednesday. Or Wednesday is the deciding day, the voting day, where you pull all these ideas together and in a variety of ways do some affinity mapping and walking art galleries and that kind of thing to actually narrow down as a team which are the best ideas that we want to start with. So that Thursday, it's build day. Thursday is pretty much all day build your prototype. And they have a structured way of doing that so you can build something. It's a low fidelity prototype, but it is well organized because you have other members of the team helping to stitch all this together. So then Friday, you're actually testing it in front of target customers. You go to people and say, in this context, show me how you would use this working prototype. And so all that is done it's less than 5 days because you have to build it in 4 days and then actually show it to customers on the 5th day.
Do they train people ahead of time in this?
So they certainly recommend, let's talk about the people. They certainly recommend, as you're setting the stage, getting ready for it, that you have a facilitator who's kind of done this before. Just to read right off the page here, choose a big challenge, get a decision maker or two in the room. So that way it's like when you get analysis paralysis, like this is the choice we're going. Recruit an actual team of people that are going to be rolling up their sleeves and doing the work. You don't want people who just sit back and watch. You want doers on this team. Pull in extra experts as you might need. And remember that, hey, if you can only get them for half a day, then you know where in the schedule to pull them in. Have a facilitator. extremely important to have someone who will help walk you through and time box and bring the time timer and all whatever clock that you have that will beep and say, sorry, we have run out of time. We have to go to the next step. You have to block 5 full days on the calendar. If you are part of this sprint team, you are not part-time, you're not half-time, you are there for the at least full 40 hours, maybe more. And then the environment helps. They've shifted this. I did this in person before COVID, and they've shifted to how to run a remote design sprint. But in person was really nice because, we chose like a WeWork kind of area that had whiteboards and glass and plenty of printouts and tape, and we could put everything up on the walls and visually walk around and touch things. That was certainly, a much better way to facilitate this than try doing it virtually. So that's who should be there, right? No ideas, no laptops, no phones. Time box it, plan for a late lunch, take breaks as you need, that kind of thing. So that gets you ready for Monday. So Monday morning, your goal on Monday is to actually figure out what problem are you solving. And you can see they have break it down to 10:15-ish do this, 11:30-ish do that, right? Where by lunchtime you've made a map of customers and key players and what they're trying to accomplish, to draw that journey map at a high level. Here's what I like about this. Right away, after you've laid it out, right after lunch, call up those experts. Either bring them in, video chat them in, whatever you need to do, and actually say, here's the problem we're trying to solve. Do you agree? What would you change? Do you have this frustration? And then where do you get stuck when you're trying to do this thing? So that really helps you quickly validate the problem you're trying to solve. The problem, right? You don't have time to do full customer discovery. You're just there to ask the experts, pretending that you're a reporter and get clarity on that.
So it doesn't help you validate the problem. It helps you choose. It helps you
choose. That's a better way of saying it.
It's because it's interesting, and I mean, we obviously spend so much effort getting out of the building, and give some homage to Mr. Blank. And our other guest, when he joins us, he's a big fan of those T-shirts. Get out of the building. Those are maybe that's what I'll get him on with the T-shirt. Yeah, I mean.
So get those experts to get out and talk to them. Yep. Interview experts on your team and guests from the outside. Yep.
Where does it say that?
Guests from the outside. You'll also appreciate this at the end. One goal is to pick a target, and by the end of the day, you want to have started at the end, Ty. It's that backcasting you just talked about. So it all ties together. Start imagining your end result and risks along the way, then work backward to figure out the steps that you're going to get there. By Monday, you have an idea what the problem is, so that everyone gets rest, comes back on Tuesday, and now we start to focus on solutions. So one thing they do that's kind of fun is do lightning demos. So you kind of sleep on it and you come back and everyone says, hey, well, the way IBM solves this problem is with this. Let me show you. And here's the way that OpenAI solves this problem. And you show that. And so you can pull from press releases or graphics or videos. And so you're really just kind of grabbing good ideas, right, of how things have been solved similarly, maybe not identically, but similarly in the past, right? Adjacent markets, right? Maybe this is how, if I'm trying to solve a tech problem, but some motherhood startup, it's solved a similar problem in a different way, then great. Let's be inspired by that, right? So we all share some really cool ideas, and you try to pull it from outside. Don't try to in my other office back in the building, we used to do this. No, you really want to be creative so that you can divide, or swarm, right? You think about that journey map. Now when you think about where are the chunks of where this could solve. Then you start sketching, right? Everyone sketches, whether you're an artist or not. And they time box it. I mean, 20 minutes, do this. Next 20 minutes, do that. And it's all about quantity, not quality at this point. Have a couple different ways to do it. Crazy eights, 8 minutes, 8 frames, 1 minute per frame. Just start drawing. What a solution would be. Great. Pick something different. Draw that. Pick something else. Draw that. And very stressful, but you get a lot of ideas because if it's just 8 minutes with 8 ideas times 8 to 10 people in a room, like you got a ton of ideas all at once.
I actually, from a facilitation standpoint, I appreciate the constraint around time.
Yeah.
Because then you get out of your head and it's literally a physical activity. And so you've increased the creativity by decreasing the intentionality. I don't know if that makes sense. I don't have to be intentional about what I'm drawing. I'm just like, I just need to get something down. And because you're not constraining your ability to be creative, but I have to get it perfect. I just need something. It actually, my senses opens up opportunities for you to think very differently about some things that's like, oh, that's just stupid. You don't have those when they have it on truck, so it can only go to 55 miles an hour. You don't have that on your brain anymore. It's not, I'm not going 55, I'm going 155. And there's all kinds of things just popping out.
And you don't have time to be distracted or go down rabbit holes or exactly. You see the value in that.
Right. There's not a what if in this space. There is just do.
Just go.
Right. That's a pretty good idea. No, just put something down.
Now they put here too, at the end of Tuesday to start recruiting customers for Friday's test. What we did, and I'll go into an example of what we did when we ran it, but we actually used the same people we interviewed on Monday. We said, can we show you what we built on Friday? And so we heard from them, validated the problem, and then showed them what we solved, albeit very roughly, but they gave us immediate feedback, and they were the same people who tested were the ones who we brought in as experts. But if you don't have that, then start finding some. Wednesday. All right, so by Wednesday morning, you now have a stack of solutions based off your sketches. That's great. You can't prototype them all, so you have to actually start narrowing them down. Design diamonds, right? The art museum one was kind of interesting because we actually hung up everybody's pictures on the wall and treat it like a walk around art museum. And so we did dot voting, where we said, okay, you get 8 dots, right? Well, we actually had to walk around and then also as part of this process is you have that speed critique where maybe you like most of someone's idea, so you're not going to like poo-poo it completely. If you just did a dot vote, you might skip over it. But if you actually had time to write down a little quick post-it note and slap it on there and say, yeah, this is good, but could you improve this? It gives you a way to give some quick feedback that, could turn something from good to great very quickly. But when you're doing 80 different ideas all at once, you don't have time to sit there and have a whole conversation about the what ifs and the how might we's. You just, great, here, change this from blue to green, stick it on there, boom, good. That's good enough to give a speed critique.
What's interesting about this is that it feels, and I've done dot voting, and you do that, is that you end up with the super intelligence. Right? You end up with a group intelligence that you could not do otherwise, and that you could not daggum near foster. So
yes, you're absolutely right.
Malcolm Gladwell talked about the guy who was the art expert, and they brought him in to examine some piece of some ancient art. He looked at it for like 10 seconds, like it's a fake, right? Because he had enough intelligence that he could do that. But I think to the idea of the super intelligence is there's a lot of I can't think of the guy's name right now, but that if I have all of this stuff, that individually I couldn't be smart enough to do it, but as you
But
have the wisdom come
the wisdom of
together,
the crowds, yeah.
wisdom of the crowd starting to, you
Yeah.
get a consensus that you almost, notice I said Adam, almost, you almost don't have to be thinking in terms of customer discovery, because the wisdom of the crowd, all this data is up on the board, that you're now kind of pushing things out against you.
Right.
Like, I didn't see that happen until I see all these coalescing dots coming together, and we're actually
Mhm.
onto something. Okay, I'm done.
So then by lunchtime, you've got a prioritized list. And by the way, you might take a good idea from this one and a good idea from that one, right? So it's not all or nothing. It's not just pick the winner. It's I like this part of this one and that part of that one, so you can mash it up. Where by Wednesday afternoon, you're actually making a storyboard to plan your prototype. You need to think about what that customer journey, that new customer journey, is going to look like from a step-by-step process, right? You might physically take those sketches off the wall and rearrange them, but you're just getting a high-level action plan for Thursday, because Thursday is the big day. Holy smokes. This is like, all right, all hands on deck. We're prototyping all day. So how do you turn that set of storyboarding, that set of activities, into something that's actually usable by the end of the day? So what you're doing here is you're actually building a usable prototype, but it is primarily mocked up, right? It is purely a front end. There's no code behind it. We're not even trying to do no code or AI code. You're just trying to draw the UI the best as possible. Obviously, this is better for digital products, whether it's a new iPhone app or whether it's a new interface. It would be much harder to do for something hardware related, unless you found a way to, even if you just made something out of Play-Doh, you could still do it. You have to be a little bit more creative about that. So you divide and conquer. You say, okay, if we're building out this workflow, I might get stuck halfway along the way. So I need Adam to do the front page, and then I'm going to do the middle page logic, and then Ty's going to do the last page logic. So what that does is it divides the work, but yet you need someone else on your team to be able to stitch it together. So they have other roles. There is someone whose job is to be the stitcher and make sure that, hey, John, does your stuff work with Adam's? And Adam, does your stuff work with Ty's? Right? Here's what we need to do, right? There's also someone who is the asset collector. Yeah, so what their job is okay, I'm building a front end, but I need some cartoon-looking arrows. I'm not going to take the time to go search Google. That's someone else's job to go search Google and get me throw some images of some cartoon arrows and send it to me somehow, and then I can finish my wireframe, right? Or I need someone to get me this kind of background or this kind of asset. And so that's what the asset collector does. And then there's even the writer. There's the one who actually kind of gets the story told together and makes sure that it flows together. So you can see how the whole team is building, but it's orchestrated. It's like a concert, right? Where you have brass and strings and woodwinds, but they are now, while playing different parts, they're working together to create harmony. And so by the end of the day, you will have a usable, clickable, functional prototype, even if there's nothing behind the scenes. Totally Wizard of Oz, right? Or Concierge. We'll talk about Concierge MVPs in the near future, but this is just quick and dirty enough to prove a concept. When you show it to a user, they're going to know. You're not trying to fake them out or lie to them. You're just going to say, this is what we've mocked up, right? This is what we heard on Monday afternoon. This is what we've mocked up by Thursday afternoon. Make it the Goldilocks quality. Make it just good enough that you can actually get some honest reactions from your customers. So that on Friday, you stick it in front of them. And the best way to do this is to actually record them using it. So you'll appreciate this, Ty. 5 is the magic number of customers, right? Because it's the 4 out of 5 dentists agree, right? That you'll find the biggest amount of things to fix, the Pareto principle of things you need to fix, by just interviewing 5 customers on this new workflow.
On just one part, just one
specific part that you're solving. Exactly.
Right.
They talk a lot about trying to do this where you only have one person showing the solution, right? You don't want a whole team of 50 people, staring at your customer trying to click on things like, oh, you clicked on the wrong thing. It's like, hey, you're going to have one person interview the target customer and say, here's this new prototype we've worked up. How would you solve this problem? And that's really important too. So that way, you're not telling them what the answer is. You're not saying, oh, look, here's what we fixed. First, click on that box over there. Second, click on this and type this in this box. Like, no, you're hands off. And you say, we understand that you were trying to order eggs at a discount. We think we've come up with a better interface. So now how would you go order eggs under this new interface? Go. And as you are doing this, explain what you're thinking and where you're searching and what you're clicking on, so that way we know what's going through your mind, right? So that way you get a lot more actual how they're actually going to use it, rather than the engineers who built it. I'm guilty of that. Saying you're doing it wrong. You're not using it the way I wanted you to use it. So you try to have your team observe remotely while there's one interviewer asking the target customer to how to use it. Just, how would you use this? So that you get, if they get stuck, of course, you can nudge them and say, okay, well, I understand that you couldn't find what you were looking for. We were thinking to put this here. So let's assume that you did find this. We'll take a note to fix that. Now let's help you get to that next step. Okay, so you clicked on that. Now what would you do? So those are those nudges that you're going to learn a lot from right away. So that by the end of Friday, you've got 5 interviews, customer interviews of a working prototype, them trying to use a working prototype, a ton of notes that your team's been taking the whole time. So that way they know what to fix and really what the next steps are, because they're going to get lots of feedback from those hopefully vocal customers to say, hey, I have no idea what this means, or this prototype isn't helpful at all, or this is amazing, right? This is exactly what I need to fix, and here are the 3 steps I would use first. So that, in a nutshell, is what the Google Design Sprint it does, and the power that you get out of it.
So have you done this before?
I have. And so
what's the hardest part? What's the biggest pain in the butt of all 5 days?
Ooh, that's a great question. I think for engineers, it's Monday. It's just to figure out, of all the problems to solve, which one are we going to agree to solve for the next 4 days? Because you kind of have to lock it in. Because there's so many problems that you want to solve, but you have to come to consensus very quickly and say, we're solving this one target. After that, the rest is pretty straightforward.
Adam, which one did you find, if you had to do this, if you haven't done this, if you have, I'm interested, if you haven't, as you walk through it, of the 5 days, which is the hardest for you?
I would say the same answer. I feel like it's I haven't done as many of these as I don't think I've ever, outside of the Google Accelerator, I have now done these professionally, like where you're doing it for the week. So I'll acknowledge that. Yeah, part of me just keeps cringing on locking in what you're testing.
Sure.
Each thing, like either it's a customer. I keep going back to David's book, honestly, now last week, and it's like, let's it's not necessarily a 5-day sprint. It's like, what is the thing we need to know?
Mhm.
How do we test that? What are we testing next? Like this
Sure.
method for me conflates too many things that could go wrong, just fits it into a week nicely. But like hearing John talk about the stuff at the end, like that's just the usability test. Like, do you know that I've seen too many teams like just run a usability test when they should be running a desirability test. And it's like, and we should have Andres on and the meetup. And I still remember when Andres gave the talk at Lean Startup conference where he pointed on the chart, like, this is where we started doing usability tests and this is where user growth. I'll never forget that chart. And we should absolutely, I'll say this, we managed to say David's name every week for a year. Andres Glussman, we should get him on. Usability tests are an amazing tool when usability is the thing that's broken, but you never know that on like a Monday of some overly like, why am I here? And I'm not saying they don't work. I don't know. Design sprints scare me. They're so resource intensive.
They're resource intensive to get learning, right? That's the whole point, right? You
As
want
long as you get, but we all know, as long as you get the right learning from the right customer, like I was happy to, I haven't seen this in a while, and I've referenced this a ton of times. I don't remember the Tuesday pre-recruiting. I would still argue that experts are internal
yeah.
and
This has
customers are
changed over time.
external.
Mhm.
So I was happy to see that. I still like the format, dare I say it, of like a startup weekend or an internal hackathon. And that's sort of what this is, but I'd rather see the slices. I'd rather see 5 days of, we go back to the MVP, the triangle, where it's the vertical slices, not the
Right.
horizontal slices.
Yep.
And I still think and I have no evidence to prove any of this, but I would love to see 5 days in a row. We're almost doing a full
A slice of the MVP every day.
yeah, you're doing your design. No, you're doing the full sprint 5 days. You're doing the full design sprint 5 full times. And I'm reading simultaneously. It's bad podcast format, but she's got an article like, do I really need 5 days? And I would argue even
Nice.
before the lovable and vibe coding, you didn't. But now I would definitely argue
Yeah.
that like day
That's
3
interesting.
and day 4, like Ty
Yeah.
asked if you can do these in parallel and not sequential. And I agree with your answer. Like, not really, but because you need the learnings then and you need the teamwork to kind of build in. So you can't really do them in parallel. But if you looked at this with our AI episode, day 3 is moot because you can now run infinity variants. Day 4 is moot because you can run it in lovable in 5 minutes. You can build, you don't need arrows. Right. You don't need to mock up. You don't need all those different roles. So I would argue, and then I'll give the floor back.
Of course you
but
would.
let me look at the end to end. Where did we go here? Yes, I still think, and I've seen it, and this was, I think you can choose a target, you can sketch a solution. Also, I think that part's flawed. Like, you don't know that it's a solution, you don't know what the problem is yet, or it's a channel, it's a different business model, but fine. Even if you're committed to the fact that this is just testing prototypes and specific features and usability, solution-based stuff, I think you can do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday on Monday, and then do it 5 days in a row. I really do, and I would love to see those stacked against each other. I think it's
all right. Sounds like it's time for you to write a book, all right? and take these concepts and smush it into daily MVPs.
The design sprint remix. Yeah, I do think. Yeah, I mean, if you can, yes, especially now with we had rapid prototyping, now we have instant prototype. Like, we've gone from rapid, we've gone to ludicrous speed, right?
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, you have instantaneous. Yeah, all right. I made my point.
What
I
else do you
would.
think, Ty?
So it's interesting. I started with one thing, and then I went completely away as I started thinking about as I was listening to Adam talk. So the very first impression of the 5 days of the hardest for me was number four,
Hmm.
right? Which
Of
is
actual
actually building,
prototyping?
yeah, of actual prototype because I'm not, I'm not constituently designed to do that. Like start building stuff, like
Sure.
Legos are like, yeah. I'm just curious about the Legos. I'm like, what's the nature of the blocks? Who cares how they go together? That's where my head goes, right? And then as Adam was talking, I got to maybe it is number one, but it's not number one in this design issue. Maybe for me, that first identification we've been at is the issue. We've been at period, full stop, return carriage, new paragraph. We've been at this thing for a year now, right? We've been meeting every Monday or every other Monday or some combination of Mondays for a year plus now. I don't know if I understand how to find the problem now that I'm thinking about it.
Hmm.
What does that mean? Constituently, like philosophically, how do you understand what problem you're trying to solve? I know, I think I'm getting better at it. I was telling a joke to the people I was doing the strategy work with. She's a woman with the PhD, she was running it. She was okay. She did a good job, but I just jumped in and do what I do anyway. The joke that said the guy goes to he wants to learn to become a black belt. He goes to the sensei and he says, Sensei, how long should I study? He said, 10 years. What if I dedicate my life? How long will it take me? 20 years. What if this is all I ever do to become a black belt? 30 years. And he doesn't, right? And so as
Mm-hmm.
I'm sitting here thinking about this idea of what problem you're solving, I think I know when people are doing solutions. I'm
Yeah.
okay. That sounds like a symptom. You're solving a symptom. But how do
Sure.
we really understand the
So
problem?
let me provide a counterpoint because I love you guys and I totally 100% agree. I'm the recovering engineer. Like I get that. And so what this also does is it gives permission and space for those people who want to solutionize, right? To just go and set aside the time to build. So that
Yeah,
way this was really valuable for the team because we said we really want to build something. Can you give us a week away from the office? We really have a good idea, but we need to do it right. We need to lock ourselves in a room for 40 hours and just get this thing done. We will learn whether or not we should keep going or stop by Friday afternoon. So it is certainly a pivot or persevere kill decision right at the end of Friday. It's not for, again, you're not for when you're starting from ground zero, right? It's really we're trying to add something, we're trying to tweak a process. You saw a list of some of the possible uses here. Launching, well, it says launching a new product or service, but really it's more like what new feature should I add? How can I fix a pain point? Those are really where it's best, where there's already something kind of in place. But it for the builders, it lets them not overthink and also not overbuild. So for you guys, I'd say it would stop you from overthinking about what problem I'm solving, and for the engineers, it would have them stop building too many things before they show it in front of somebody. So that's the benefit of this yin and yang to balance out. You have 5 days, go, right?
So
That's
the
your choice.
facilitator in me, it gets it, right? The facilitator in me
Mm-hmm.
absolutely has no problem because I think I said earlier in the show that stop thinking and start doing. Just start putting ideas, start sticking them on the wall. I don't care what it is.
Go, go,
We'll,
go.
we'll, we'll figure out thematically what dripped out of our collective
Mm-hmm.
brains. But as I looked at this and as I listen to Adam, and I appreciate your kind of reframing, John, that it for the engineers stop building stuff, for the philosophers stop thinking about stuff, start everybody start doing something at the very end, right? But there's still it really highlighted to me, and I actually have a book somewhere downstairs in my library that's talking about how to solve problems. And maybe this is I need to go. We'll put this in our backlog about a person that we need to go and talk to. I'll go find that book, and that this is somebody that we should talk to. Like, how do we really understand the nature of what it means to have a problem?
Mm-hmm.
Right? People have my sense is, and even in the design sprint, people have, uh, I'm trying to find the right word. They have the experience, right?
Yeah.
They have the experience, the out, the experience of the problem, but they can only characterize it in their experience, not what the real problem is. Does
Hmm.
that make sense? What I just said? So even as they described it, they're
Yeah.
describing their experience of the
Right.
problem, and our job
Exactly.
is to unpack the experience to
Sure.
get to the problem. So they don't go, "Oh my God, thank you." That was who was it? Arthur C. Clarke. That you can't that if a technology is sufficiently sophisticated, you can't differentiate that from magic.
Right.
And I think that what people find in the work that we do is feel my sense is it feels magical to them. They're like,
Yeah.
"How did you know? I just
So
you told me everything."
what if? And the best thing about frameworks is you can tear them apart, right? And
Mhm.
see how
Yes.
mechanics work and rebuild them. I think this would be an amazing exercise to redesign the Google Design Sprint. One way is like the way Adam did it. What if you were able to do 5 design sprints per week, right? Do 1 design sprint a day. That would be a fun way to vertically slice that. And I think another one that would be creative would be what if there is a problem definition design sprint? So you're forced to go through the variety of maturations on what problem are you solving.
Well, isn't that the like pull up the double OODA loop? I used to cringe when people would say, but now I'm
Oh, the
the
double
cringe.
really. That's a new
The
one.
well, isn't that the double diver? It's because you're grasping the problem first, and then isn't there a double OODA loop? Am I making this up?
I don't know.
Or even just the design, the actual design, the double diamond
Hmm.
is your
Yeah.
diver. Your
Yes, it's very aligned to the double diamonds for design thinking. Yeah,
yeah, that's
where
kind of what I'm thinking. Like,
So Adam, if we did do 5 days of sprints, the word that popped in my mouth is popped in my head, not my mouth. It's coming out of my mouth, but it popped in my head first. Is calculus, right? The area under the curve is this examination of smaller and smaller pieces of the data that we have to get more and
hmm
more accuracy about what's really going on. And so one design sprint is just a left and right limit, which means there's a whole lot left in between.
hmm
But multiple design sprints that are built on the double diamond or triple or multiple diamonds, whatever that might be,
hmm
are getting more and more sophisticated, not about creating a problem, but really sophisticated about understanding the problem because you've now taken the left and right and you made them now or now. You're never actually going to get until you actually do something,
right.
right? That the customer goes, "Holy smokes, Steve Blank," but it's only 80% done. They don't care, but it's
Yeah,
only 80%
good
done.
enough.
Get them to buy it. If they
Yep.
want to give you money, you're good to go. But if you can get that, if you can narrow the learning, and I saw that in the chat, you put would it be the job to be done of the design sprint? I'm not sure. Is it learning or designing? That's what you put, Adam. And so maybe it's a little bit of both.
Yeah,
yeah,
I'd say both.
Maybe our world is too dialectic, and it needs to
Yeah,
be more wave end particle,
it's the
wave
yes
end
and.
point.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, because there's too
and yeah,
there's too many combinations and permutations that I've just seen. If you just do this once, just mathematically, you add calculus now got me started. Or it's like there's 50
Nice.
different problems, then there's 50 different segments, then even the 16. I love that the storyboard. I think that does work. I think David also uses that. Like, where do you find the risky assumption? You draw whether it's the 8-part
Hmm.
story or the 16
Yep.
part thing here, and you're looking at it like what needs to happen next. It's sort of backward casting, forward. It's like you
Hmm.
at least have to fill all of them out, and then you can look and see, well, is that reasonable? Is that going to happen? And then you can find the risky assumption there. Um, but yes, if this is done all at once simultaneously, you don't know. I think all the
Yeah.
cause and effect gets lost, and it becomes a totally different exercise. You're not actually trying to get the variable, but if you do the variables in shorter loops, and now I know 5 days is better. Like almost everything in blog posts, it's better than doing it in a year, and it's better
Exactly.
that the engineer spent. But I also think, yeah, I don't know. I guess you could criticize, you can over criticize. It's a great tool. I really do think that. But yeah, I think you need to define the problem, you need to define the customers, you need to define the difference between experts and customers and internal and external and usability and which test. That's why, again, David's book, don't define the learning objective, then figure out how you're going to test it and what the feedback loop is. Don't just like commit to the process. But yes, I agree. If you're like not just launching it, first of all, I hate it for launching a new idea. Just that
I might lean
I'll
towards you
just,
on that
I
one.
was trying to be like, but just we're running out of time. I'll just say that for new features, for certain uptime stuff, like if we're going to come in and decrease call, what was the old sales metric? Like when people used to service call, service requests,
Right.
we're going to decrease this specific KPI. Like, how do
Mm-hmm.
we do that? I think
Right.
there's a balance of brainstorming and action and testing that this does very well. That where it's like, okay, then you can, then the experts have more weight and they understand why things
Yeah.
would and would not work. That's why all the prototyping
Yeah.
is.
If we're
I,
trying
I
to,
think it works for.
decrease.
Yes,
Mhm.
I do think it works for taking a specific metric
known.
or KPI, yeah, and saying, okay, how do we
Mhm.
get this number's off? And we know the journey. We know that what users, we know why they're coming in. We know why they're upset. Fix this learn thing. Yeah, I didn't say it. I think sprints for that can work, but I would love to see some data. That's why I also put in the chat. Like, is there a library? And it's like, I don't know. They have
No,
all the
they
very
that would be great if they
respectable.
did.
They have very respectable Slack. Who else is up here? But I don't think Slack was created doing.
No,
Slack might
no,
use
might be improved.
design
Right.
sprint, right?
hmm
So let me see here. Yeah, Slack, Harvard, Google, Spot. Yeah, like Spotify, Spotify, and that's another one we should cover. The
Yeah.
have we done the Spotify,
We've not done the
pod,
Spotify model. No.
the pods and the pizzas and the what is
No.
it? The squads and what's
Yeah.
we have to
That
go
would be
off
a
a
fun
tangent.
one to
What is it?
do.
What is the Spotify one? What's it called?
The holacracy model, or
Yeah, but what are like the actual units? There's like a fun name. All right,
oh yeah,
I'll look it up.
for a future podcast. All right, we're at that time. This is just flown by. Lots of good stuff. Lots of things that could go on about lessons learned and all that along the way. But I think I
Holy
got out of it
smokes.
what we hoped to get out of it, which was like, how would you use this? Like, where could we take this? What's it good for? What's it not good for? So, Ty, close this out. What are your final thoughts
Yeah.
on this?
So my thought is very is it a wave or a particle, right? Are you learning or are you designing? And I think the piece that you put in the chat, Adam, about is it this or that? Can it be both? Right? Even as you're doing this 5 day, even as you're doing this 5 day activity, at the end, you're going to be just designing and showing something. It is only as good as the learning that's associated with it. That is actually referred to the thing that you thought you were trying to solve in the beginning, which I think is, Adam, your point that this is a linear process as much as it is as a referential process. Right? At the end of it, you're referring back to the very thing that you started on Monday with. So that's what I learned today. So this is good. Appreciate that. How about you, John?
Yeah, I mean, so having done one, it's high pace. I would not recommend just going right into the next one with the same team right away. Like it's very. Oh, I mean, it could be stressful. I'll frankly say that to some people.
Is it
With
because it requires you to think or the pace?
the time boxes, the change of thinking, because you're shifting. Okay, we had to make a decision. Let's keep going. It's almost pushing you forward. Sometimes when you're not ready, and that's where again having a great facilitator helps. Um, and for the purpose of again learning by the end of the week, like that's the goal. I'm a big fan of sprints in general. Artificial time boxes are great because it forces you to deliver something of value, knowing that it's not perfect, but we need to continue to iterate on it. And the only way you're going to do that is if you put it in front of a customer. So for that, it worked really well. We got a lot of feedback when we did an exercise for my team. Learned a lot, and we actually were able to take what we learned from there and actually build it into the product. A much better version, of course. But if we hadn't validated that with 5 actual users, we could have been talking about it or planning it for a year. It was a forcing function. Adam, final thoughts?
Oh, I was gonna go with something totally generic, but now I have a new thought. Like, it's not a final thought. This is a new episode. Why is this even a design sprint? Like, you're talking about how much energy you should be. Should be your work if you're a product. Like, this is a work week. It's
So
not. Why is this a special? Okay, it just dawned
I
on me.
love
I'm
it.
not trying to be overly
No.
dramatic, but like, we're talking about how this should be
Yeah.
sequential, like, and you should be talking to customers all the time. And like, I don't know. Like, yeah, I
You want to hear a
respect
secret,
this.
Adam? When I coach teams, because in Agile, they don't want sprints to be any longer than 4 weeks. Industry average is 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I like to push people to 1 week sprints. Why? You're going home on Friday. Like for most salaried workers, they're not working the weekends. Can you show me some value by Friday, and then by Monday morning get a new plan and then deliver something else the next Friday? Can you just do that? And so you're absolutely right. Why isn't this just called your work week?
So I have an idea about that. I have a thought about that. And this, I'm going to close out on this. And I'm glad you said it, Adam, because I thought about this right before what you just said, that special operations teams are special operations teams for a reason. They are not regular Army, right? Regular Army has a steady state bureaucratic function of beans, bullets, and band-aids. Special operations teams go in when nobody else can do what they have to do. But the pace of operation is so high that it takes a very special person to be able to do that, because the cortisol levels associated with that kind of activity are damn near unsustainable, right? The amount of so John, a 1 week, can you imagine that for 4 weeks in a row at this pace? You'd have people going crazy.
Yeah, you absolutely will.
The only time it works is when there's a crisis, right? And there's nothing else yet to be solved. 2 points on that. There's a colleague of mine associated who also wrote this book about creating sustainable change that I put in the chat around backcasting. He wrote a book on post-bureaucratic organizations, something along that. I can't remember the name of the book right now. But in there, he wrote a chapter in there that, yes, creating sustainable change through backcasting. Great article, 4 pages, tells you how to do the whole thing. Larry Herschel is the guy's name, that guy right there. He said that in times of danger, times of stress, people know exactly what they're supposed to do. His example is hurricane comes along, knocks down all the power lines. What's the incident of people getting electrocuted during that time? Damn near zero, right? Completely low. Why?
Wow.
Because you know exactly what you're supposed to do. But the way in which you do a regular line, it's just there to put and you shock yourself, right? You end up dying because the focus is not there. But you can't sustain that. The human body can't sustain that level of focus for that long. And so while I think it's important, we can't dismiss the fact that there are some problems that are bureaucratic in nature. So without being political, I think that making a political statement, I think that what's happening in the government right now with cutting all this is like, just do it. I gave you a hammer, just go and do it. And people are like, yeah, that's not how this works. There are some functions that are purely kind of systematized, bureaucratic. The pace at which happens in Silicon Valley versus the pace at which stuff gets done in large bureaucratic systems like this, it's not going to be good. It's just people are going to lose their, you know what, right? Sugar honey iced tea. I didn't curse, John. I didn't curse Adam. I said sugar honey iced tea. You can find it on on what's the show, the movie that the kids, I like to move it, move it. I like to move it, move it. What is
The
it?
Madagascar or
Madagascar, right? Chris Rock was the zebra, right? And so, how do you? I think you have to use, to your point, John, a sprint like this. You have to be very, very focused on what you want to do.
mm-hmm.
The thing that you're, because you'll drive people crazy because they can't keep that level of attention, that
Yeah.
level of stress, that level of uncertainty, unless they're specifically trained to do that. That's why special operations guys are
Mm-hmm.
specifically trained to do that versus regular army. Like, hey, look, I sweep floors. What do you want?
Yeah.
Right.
Interesting. Good
Just that my
point.
thought.
Good point. You gotta consider the humans and all this too. So well said.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, this is fantastic. Thanks for going on the ride. Adam, last words, last comments.
You don't want me to do that again. That was
You
No.
unmuted, and I thought
that was the yeah. I'm done. But we'll get next week.
don't give
Awesome.
Adam an inch when he can take.
Go
one.
find somebody, Adam. Who should we interview? Your job. I got David. Your job next time. Go get somebody.
I think it's our concierge MVP friend, but we'll
There you go.
Let's go make it happen.
we'll
This has
do
been
it.
fun.
All right, guys.
We'll see y'all next week. Take care.